In 1906, John Philip Sousa traveled to the United States Capitol to talk about what he called the talking machines. John Philip Sousa was not a fan of the talking machines. This is what he had to say. These talking machines are going to ruin the artistic development of music in this country. When I was a boy, in front of every house in the summer evenings, you would find the young people together singing the songs of the day or the old songs. Today you hear these infernal machines going night and day. We will not have a vocal cord left, Sousa said. The vocal cords will be eliminated by a process of evolution, as was the tale of man when he came from the ape. Now, this is the image I want you to focus on, this image of the young people together singing the songs of the day or the old songs. This is a picture of culture. We could call it, using modern computer terminology, a kind of read-write culture. Sousa's fear was that we would lose the capacity to engage in this read-write creativity because of these, quote, infernal machines. They would take it away and displace it, and in its place, we'd have the opposite of read-write culture, what we could call read-only culture. Culture where creativity was consumed, but the consumer was not a creator. Culture in this sense that was top-down, where the vocal cords of the millions of ordinary people had been lost. Sousa warned that the, quote, tide of amateurism cannot but recede, but he thought this receding was a bad thing. This professional celebrating the importance of the amateur in producing culture. There's no doubt, in my view, that read-only culture is going to thrive in the digital age. And read-write culture is going to be revived in the digital age. The only doubt we should have is whether copyright will survive in the digital age. In my view, internet is extending read-only culture, building massively efficient technologies enabling people to get and consume culture created elsewhere, anytime, any place. This is the poster child of this image of culture, the Apple Music Store, the iTunes Music Store for 99 cents, allowing you to download any song to your iPod and only to your iPod, but you're guaranteed, at least within the American culture, to be cool if you do this. And not just Apple, and maybe not most importantly Apple, this form of culture will continue to grow, continue to diversify, as the number of artists creating and celebrating this form continues to go up. So this form's not going away, and read-write is going to be revived by this new technology. Revived in the sense of encouraging a kind of expression we could refer to as remix. Seeing remix, of course, by professionals. DJ Danger Mouse famously. More interestingly, recently, Girl Talk. Many forms of artists who are using this digital technology to create a different way of speaking, but that's not the part most interesting to me. What's interesting to me is the revival of these amateurs. This is important. Not so much because of the technique. Of course, the technique has been around since video or film. What's important here is that the technique has been democratized. It's anybody with a $1,500 computer who can take sounds and images from the culture around us and remix them to express ideas differently and more powerfully for a culture, an age that understands through media, no longer through text. Now, in my view, if you take these extensions, read-only and read-write, that the internet is making possible, this is a moment to celebrate. But most in this industry, from my country at least, don't celebrate this much. They focus instead, when they think about these kids using computers, on piracy. We in the United States launch a war. Actually, we launch many wars, but the one I want to talk about here is the copyright wars. A war which my friend, the late Jack Valenti, referred to as his own, quote, terrorist war, where apparently our kids are the terrorists. The question we should be asking here is this terrorist war going to stop piracy? And of course, it's ridiculous to think that this waging of war will stop this form of use. As Microsoft calls the dark net, is permanent, so long as the internet survives. So if it won't stop this form of piracy, will it have any effect? And my view is this terrorist war certainly will have an effect. And its most important effect is to erode the respect that we have for something called copyright. This terrorist war, this unwinnable war, and trust me, I'm an American, I know about unwinnable wars, is perceived by many as an unjust war, and it only fuels a kind of copyright abolitionism, building a generation that views itself against you, against copyright. In my view, this is a very bad thing. In my view, copyright is an essential part of the creative process. It is needed, and if we're to protect it in a digital age, what's needed here is a certain kind of leadership. And that's a leadership from you. Here are the 3 lessons about leadership. The first lesson here is that you need to know your enemies, which means you need to know your allies. Now, the point is, CC has nothing to do with an anti-copyright movement. Its licenses are built upon copyright. It depends upon copyright. In this sense, it's pro-copyright in that it's pro-choice of creators for what they do with their creative work. And it inspires in creators not only the exercise of that choice, but the defense of those whose rights have been violated. These are not enemies, these are allies of this movement to respect and build respect for copyright. Number 2, we need to practice balance in this debate around copyright. Finally, leadership requires recognizing change. The existing system, as it's architected from the 19th century, could never work with these digital technologies. Either we force our kids to stop creating, or they force a revolution to repeal the basic structure of copyright. Both alternatives, in my view, are ridiculous. There's no way we can kill these technologies or how these technologies are being used. We can only criminalize their use. We can't stop our kids from using these technologies to express ideas differently. We can only drive this act of creating underground. We can't make our kids passive in the way that I was passive growing up. The only thing we can do is make our kids, quote, pirates. And the question we need to ask is this good policy? In my country, kids live in this age of prohibition, living life constantly against the law. This life, constantly against the law, is corrosive. It is corrupting of the very idea of the rule of law, of the idea of what it means to respect law, corrupting of democracy, of copyright. The copyright abolitionist movement needs extremists. You need to stop giving them what they need. Thank you very much.